It was nearly 20 years ago to today that I started my automotive career. No, it wasn't as a 16-year-old driver, but instead as an automotive reviewer, getting my first stint to tell people what I think. Hey, welcome to this edition of Road Warrior. I'm your host, Grant Roberson. Now, back then, that first test drive was behind the wheel of a 1999 Chevy Blazer Trailblazer Edition, and what that hinted at was things to come, and what that meant was, well, the demise of the Blazer name. Well, what has since happened? Well, it's all come full circle. So if you remember that 1999 edition, well, that was referred to as a small sport ute, and well, I don't remember the term crossover really debuting, in at least for several years later. Well, if you look at that versus what we see here, hard to compare the two. Basically, this being where the small SUV crossover segment has gone. First off, the numbers are fairly decent. This one being a lot bigger than I remember, pretty much in every dimension. What I also like is, well, the styling you see here. Now, I've always complained about where the crossovers have taken the SUV, but one thing I do like is, well, this seems so much more refined than kind of the truckish models that, well, whence we came. By the numbers, the Blazer really measures up and fits into the mid-size segment quite well, really superseding my expectations, really pushing about 191 inches overall. That compared to some other sport utes that fall in about the 185 to 189 range. So this definitely measuring up in this segment. Now, as for the wheelbase, fairly stretched at about 112. Now, other big numbers that really come into play, especially on the interior when we tested out the room for 5 full-size adults on the inside, well, it's the width, around about 76 inches wide. Height, not too bad at 67. Now, one thing crossovers can do is minimize the grille warfare, and you see it in the designs, really with a sweeping front end, a sweeping undercarriage that comes up and really noses the overall grille, really minimizing the overall look. That compared to the Blazer, which is a lot more broad and open and kind of gives it a lot more prowess, blending a little bit of SUV qualities with the crossover. Now, what I like is really the open face grille really sweeps across the front and really mimics some of the competition, even right down to some sedans. Maybe if you hint at Lexus, you'll see something almost at the same angles. Now, it is kind of a two-tier approach, lower down here and a implied up here at the top with just a few portholes to sweep in some extra airflow. Now, don't get confused here on the outer side with the headlight and running light assembly. What you see at the top, really menacing, but that is really just kind of an accent lighting. There's no throw from that whatsoever. Instead, the traditional headlights are actually tucked down low. This actually seems to look like fog lights at first, but this is really the operation here on this vehicle. Overall, though, what I like is the headlights are truly casting where you need it, and this just makes for one spectacular front end. Now let's talk about the 4 corners. What I like on this Blazer Premier is its standard all-wheel drive, pretty much getting the grip when you need it. Now, you can go with a standard front-wheel drive as well as standard size tires. Now, that's going to be either an 18, 20, or as you see it here, 21 inch. That's going to be a 265/45 on this particular model. Next is really the ingress, and really the Blazer gets extra bonus points here basically by providing a simple button at every entry. Basically, the 4 doors and the rear hatch makes life so much simpler. That pretty much means when the key is in your pocket or wherever it may be, as long as it's with you, quick ingress. Now, here at the driver door, press it once, press it again, unlocks everyone. But again, if you're in a rush, what's helpful on this model versus some of the competition is, well, they don't put this access here. Instead, you got to go up here. If it's raining, it's just kind of a cumbersome effect. Instead, here on the Blazer, just simply press there and you get right in. So much simpler and so obvious of the way to go. Now, before we sweep around to the business end, let's talk about one other thing, the Achilles heel when it comes to safety and security. This one being security here at the fill-up. Now, I'm a big fan of when the vehicle is locked, well, the fill-up area as well, but just not the case here on the Blazer, but it is a capless system if you prefer that. But I think across the board, we pretty much need to lock the fill-up area with the vehicle. Now, next is really the business end of the crossover. And what I like is this is really where you get the benefit of this vehicle being sport utility-esque, really in the overall width you see, and of course the amount of cargo, and I'll show you that in just a second. But let's look at the design. What you're first going to see, typical spoiler extension of the roof line, really sweeps out, gives you that angle like we see from the profile, again mimicking a lot of what the competition is doing. Nice stylized rear taillights, nice sculpting of course, body color all the way around this vehicle, not a lot of chrome standing out once you get away from the grille, just a little bit up top on the door handles and just a little bit here at the back when it comes to the badging. Now when it comes to safety, backup camera, backup sensors, and that really is going to help because this vehicle does have some towability, around about 4,500 towing capacity as we see it here. And that's going to be helpful because once you remove this lower cover, you can get right there to the hitch, and the backup camera gives you a nice bird's eye view so you can really couple up quite quickly. Now a couple other things, design points. One thing I'm not a big fan of is this little niche area right here. At first glance, it kind of thought someone maybe had bumped the vehicle and kind of indented it. Basically, it's just kind of an extra little chiseling, but it does make for just a little bit of extra work when you clean this vehicle. What I prefer is a little bit more smooth body lines through here, just so we don't have this little ridge line. It just seems a little quirky. Lastly is getting in here, and what you're going to do is typically go right to this area. It just seems like a natural fit to do right here and get this hatch going, but instead for someone my height, it's actually kind of a bend down affair to get to the access point. Well, once you do that, this particular model does have the power rear hatch, and it clearly gets up out of the way and decent height for even my 6'2" frame. Now if you like the exterior of this vehicle, one thing you're truly going to like is the inside, and one spectacular area has to be the cargo. Now first off, let's slide this up out of the way. I'll explain to you that in just a second, but what lies beneath here, and what I like is it's a nice spare tire. Again, something a lot of vehicles are getting rid of. This vehicle has it. Also what it has is a lot of lower storage, so if you want to keep some items in here, maybe go to the grocery store a lot, keep those recycled bags, whatever, nice compartments below the cargo floor. The next feature I really liked was this rail system. Now it took a second to understand what its point was, but what's great is we went to the store, got some larger items, whatever it may be, bags or whatever. What was great is we put them in place, pressed on either side, and actually locked that in and cinched the bags into place. And what that really minimized is all that being slung around. Now on the outer side, again, some nice little pockets to keep some items. One area where I'm not a big fan is when there's a Nemec power under the hood. In some cases that's okay because, well, it's a smaller crossover, but for this bigger mid-sized Blazer, it definitely needs to deliver when it comes to power, and there are two power plants, specifically the 2.5 liter inline 4-cylinder. That's going to deliver around about 193 horses and 188 foot-pounds of torque. But thankfully, this being the Premier, came with, well, the bigger engine, that being a 3.6 liter V6. Now it's going to deliver around about 308 horses and 270 foot-pounds of torque. Now for the smaller engine, that can be coupled with the 6-speed automatic, but for this one, it came standard with the 9-speed automatic transmission. If you're looking for nostalgia on the inside, well, you may not find it because, well, I just couldn't draw on the past, but instead, pretty much the future. Now, first thing you'll notice is really front and center on the dash, and General Motors really has perfected their Mylink system. Huge touchscreen, everything right there at your fingertip. Now, what I like is really the shortcuts down below, but you can go to the home screen here. That's going to give you that kind of split screen that allows you to see multiple options in one glance. But what I really prefer is simply having one full screen of what I decide. Now, entertainment's really easy to use, presets all the way across the top. You do have the shortcuts down below, and even better, you do have the climate there, so you don't have to glance down, but instead do everything you want to do right here, even right down to fan speed. Now, I mentioned the climate control there on the touchscreen up above, mainly because you may prefer to use it instead of these tucked away buttons just below this ridge on the dash. Now, it's not real difficult to use, but this screen up here is so much in view for the driver versus really looking down here. Now, if you do need to navigate, what you're going to find is your mode selects here on the left side, some other quick functions on the right, as well as dual zones up front, as well as heated and cooled seats. And the one thing I found is the cooled seats seem to come on almost automatically based on the temperature outside. I don't really ever remember turning them on, and they basically were there when I needed them. Now what's interesting for the temperature select, you're not going to find any controls up and down, but instead a dialing selection here on the vent, basically turning it left and right for both front occupants, and that relates to the digital readout and as well as up top. Now as for the middle, you do have the fan speed. I'm not a big fan of buttons. It's just, again, kind of hard to dive into that when you're driving, but you can go up and down real easy, as well as some connectivity in the middle, USB and USB-C. One missed opportunity on this particular model is sitting right here. First off, the oversized storage area basically for electronics, but what I would have preferred is that wireless charging base, and you'll see it on some other models, but you're able to set your phone right here and it wirelessly charges it. That is an opportunity that this area really would allow. Now going to the middle of the vehicle, what you're going to see between the front occupants is dual cup holders up front, as well as kind of your all-wheel drive system in the form of this toggle right here, as well as the parking sensor turn on and off button right there. I believe General Motors took their knowledge in the Mylink system to the gauge cluster, because really you see the rewards here. Now first thing you're going to notice is the analog tach there on the left, but pretty much everything else you need to know is in the digital form there in the middle. Now what I like is this particular viewpoint is the touring mode, has the digital readout for the speed up top, but other various information toggleable really right there in the middle. Now what I have here is the audio system selected. It allows me to really scroll that down, up and down, and get my favorite station. But if I want to, I can go to the left here and select other various features, to the navigation, to some information. But if you want to go to a different mode, you can go to options, and what you'll see here is touring, but you simply hit the right button and you'll get the option to go to sport mode. Now when you go to sport mode, it changes the overall look, gives you kind of this traditional setup with a huge digital speedometer, and of course you'll get a digital readout when you're hitting the speed. Now you can scroll up and down and get various other information as you're going through. Now I don't prefer this one just because the other one gives you so much more information and it just feels a little bit more comfortable. Now to change that functionality there on the gauge cluster, you're going to use this simple scroll up and down knob, as well as the left and right button when you're selecting other functions. Now here on the left side is the cruise control. You do have a heated steering wheel, real easy to use. Between the front occupants, you will find this center console. Now one thing I did think, it was almost too high even for my height. The elbow support just seemed too elevated, but other than that, it really provided nice support. Now what you're going to find also when you open it up is plenty of extra room, and also some connectivity in the form of USB, USB-C, and a traditional power supply. Now what you're going to see is decent legroom across the board, 41 inches in the front and nearly equal in the back, about 39 inches. Now again, we had 5 full-size adults in here and they easily fit across the second row. Now what helped with that is of course the overall width, but most notably was the extra feet room, really with no traditional hump there in the middle. Everyone found room enough for their feet. Even better, that center console really tucks back, really prevents knees from banging around, and really allows the feet to move forward and find a resting spot. Now as for connectivity, what you're going to find USB, USB-C, and a traditional household outlet. Even better, nice airflow right through the middle. Now it should come as no surprise that the second row really can transition into cargo, about 30 cubic feet there in the back and more than double that when the second row is folded forward. And the way to do that is simply by this handle here, simply pull it one time and the seat lays forward. Now what I truly like is the fact that the headrests do not need to be removed. Now my seat is about as far back as it can go, still plenty of room, but you can tuck that backward if you need. But simply nice split back there, so you can do a little combination of cargo and passengers. Now as the rain begins to fall and cuts this show short, one thing we have to really take time to notice is the exterior, and that's truly what everyone looked at. They saw the name and said, who knew that was coming back out? And certainly they wanted to take a look. And the big reward is not only the exterior pizzazz, but truly the room on the inside. This vehicle feels definitely big and not like a crossover. Again, it's in the upper mid-size segment, and truly 5 adults fit in with ease. Now again, this was the Premier, so it had all the luxury you expect, plus the horsepower to boot. But it was definitely a great vehicle and had fond memories from 20 years ago. Now, as always, thank you for watching this edition of Road Warrior. Keep both hands on the wheel and eyes straight ahead.